Hey, welcome to the Veteran Business Community. Join us today as we actually interview John Woodall. He's a West Point graduate who's an entrepreneur. And today we're going to go in and discuss what he's doing in his local community in the Houston, Texas area, the amazing work that he's doing partnering with Rice University. We're going to talk about his own business and how he helps service disabled veterans with their claims. And we even get into some of the stuff he's done in the corporate and executive world when he's consulting with businesses, talking about hiring for skill sets versus experience, and also the three process problem. Basically, in almost every business that's out there, there's what the company thinks is happening, what the employee thinks is happening, and what's actually happening. So sit back, relax, and let's jump in.
Go. So, hey, welcome everybody to the Veteran Business Community. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. David Jones, and we have a very special guest here, Mr. John Woodall, and he is a former Army, and he also owns a business. So he is a veteran entrepreneur here, and we want to get to know John and share his story, and then also what he's doing now to benefit veterans. So with that, John, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate having you on here. And if you could just, kind of say a little bit about kind of your military background, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah. First, Hal and David, it's an honor to get to visit with you guys on this platform. I really appreciate y'all making time for me to connect with more veterans. My story, I grew up in Tennessee and, loved it. And, in eighth grade, I knew I wanted to go into the Army. And so I, did everything I could to try to get into West Point. And I'm grateful that worked out. It was hard, but I loved it. And, was able to study, operations research and systems engineering. And that was a great fit for me because it to me just was a great tool in just how to solve problems. After that, I went into the artillery and spent 5 years making big guns go boom. I was put into the MLRS, and I loved that. It was really it was a great fit for me, and just learned some great life lessons. Met some amazing people, and that's probably where I truly learned. If you just let people do their job that are good at their job, they're going to make the whole team look great. And so that was a great life lesson, and then also, where I grew up with two great parents. We had a great home. My dad was a prosecutor. My mom was a teacher. So I grew up in a great home. I learned in the military. Not everybody gets to do that. And so that was another great life lesson, that everybody comes from different backgrounds. But, one thing I loved about the Army is, what have you done for me today? And so your past is really the past. It's what can you do today, and what are you going to do going forward? So that was a great lesson too. And I really enjoyed it. After 5 years in the Army, I was ready to test the private sector, and I knew I wanted to get into big construction. And so another life lesson, I went to my first job interview, and I didn't know how to, really build a resume or, do an interview. So I just showed up at a company, and I just said, I'd like to speak to the VP of construction. And this was a good sized company. And they're like, well, who are you? I said, John. And so I visited with them, and we met for an hour and a half, and it was basically me listening to an hour and 25 minutes of their Army stories. And I thought, this is really cool. There's a lot of companies out there that employ veterans, but really appreciate veterans at the same time. So that was great. And so I did that for a while. Then I, was recruited into oil and gas, and really enjoyed that, and doing big assets management. And again, you talked about working with just some of the smartest people ever. And between the Army and oil and gas, I learned real quick, never judge anybody by where they did or did not go to school. and I learned the difference between being intelligent and being smart. And there's just some amazingly intelligent people out there who, they could be an E1 or an O10. There's just some amazingly smart people out there. And if you just listen to them and let them do their job, they'll make everybody look good. So after oil and gas, then I, wanted to go back and did my MBA at Rice, and I loved that. That was a great program, great campus, very, very pro America, very pro military, very pro veteran, in the business school. I think 20% of my class was veterans, and that was really, that was a great surprise for me, and just how much they embrace veterans. They do a lot of programs for veterans. Really, really an amazing institution. After that, I started to get doing more turnarounds for companies, and I had done operations at large levels for big companies around the world, and little bitty levels for little bitty companies. But I just, was good at figuring it out and getting it done and simplifying the complex. And so I really enjoyed helping companies do turnarounds, and that comes with its own set of unique challenges, but lots of great learning, and it was fun to pass, to mentor people and help them see, different ways to get to the same goal that may be a lot more efficient. And sometimes that's well embraced, and sometimes it's not. And probably doing turnarounds is, I really learned that you have to meet people where they are, not just, physically in their location, but mentally and emotionally. Because, if you're a consultant and you're brought in to help somebody, you're usually not brought in to help them because you're doing amazingly well. And so you have, and a lot of their, a lot of what they've done, they're emotionally attached to their processes and procedures. So it's really hard. And that's where I've really, have learned a lot more of just asking a ton of questions and listening. And so that I learned that's an amazing skill set, just asking questions and listening. And so after, a bit of that, I was asked to come in and lead another disability benefits company. And to be honest, I thought it was going to be the most boring thing in the whole world. And, dealing with government bureaucracies and paperwork and this and that. But what I found was I was able to do the exact same thing I had been doing, identifying problems, solving them, growing the company, scaling the company, fixing inefficiencies. And so I learned that, I was product agnostic, and I was doing the same thing. I was just doing it for an entirely different type of product. So I realized that, it wasn't just helping some, CFO get their net profits up. You're actually changing somebody's life by getting them something that they truly need. And where I was, there was not an emphasis on veterans, and that's where I really, felt more passionate. Not that, other benefits that, other people deserve, aren't worthy and great, but being a veteran, seeing veterans, that's where my passion was. And so in February, I recently formed Veterans Disability Benefits of America, and that's what we're doing. We're helping, veterans get for the first time, or, increase their VA ratings, disability ratings. And surprisingly, there's a lot of veterans that, are A, not getting benefits at all, B, way under benefited, or C, really opposed to getting those benefits. And so Hal got to see, a very, what I hoped was going to be a very educational presentation on just how many benefits there are for veterans, if they can get a VA rating. And so launched this business in February, and it's going well. And I guess for the first time this morning, I've also created a nonprofit called the Veterans Foundation, and I'm very excited about that. We're going to try to help a lot of veterans, especially first-time applicants, get their VA rating for free. But also, we want to figure out how to create a financial bridge for the really needy veterans, because despite my best efforts, my team's best efforts, anybody's best efforts, you're taking on a bureaucracy, at the federal government, and that can be a very slow process. And some of these veterans they need help now, and so we're looking. We want to figure out how do we create a financial bridge for these veterans so they can start getting help now. And so that's where I am. I've been married for 25 plus years to an amazing lady. I've got two really great kids. They have way more, they're awesome. They got great futures, and I'm just excited to be here.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, John. Wow, what a great story, man. There's a ton to unpack there.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that with me in the group here. David, anything that you want to jump into first?
Yeah, kind of interesting and ironic here with the timing. So it's funny. So we were at my in-laws on Saturday for a cookout, for the 4th, and they have a few veterans in the family as well, that side of the house. And one of my wife's aunts she's about to turn 80, but she was a nurse in Vietnam, like in Vietnam, like her base got shelled multiple times. She lost some of her nurses and other stuff. And she said she had a real hard time getting benefits because they didn't classify women as combat related, even if they were in country, even if they were exposed to it. And she was exposed to the Agent Orange. She was exposed to all that stuff. And they're like, yeah, but you weren't combat. I'm sorry, you weren't really overseas, you weren't in a conflict. They're like, you're not really a veteran. She said she couldn't even get veteran status coming home. And she couldn't even get into the VFW because they wouldn't recognize her because she was a female. And I was like, I've never heard of this. Like, this is crazy. So now she's fighting. Now she has a disability, but.
I've not heard that. I've heard a lot of challenges, especially from people with the Vietnam era. I've not heard that one. I met with the veteran last week, and this was an amazing story. He enlisted in the Navy, and wanted to do great things, and then somehow was transitioned to a GS role, but he had to wear a military uniform. He had to qualify at the rifle range. He had to do everything that you did in the military, but he was considered GS and not active duty. So none of that time was on a DD Form 214, but he had all the same experiences. And then, and then prior to that, he would do like, hurricane disaster relief projects, in a reserve role. And that's where most of his military time was in the reserves, even though it was full time. But so a lot of these deployments were cut off right before people would qualify for a DD Form 214. And so the challenge there is all of the issues that were experienced during that time frame is connecting it to a time that is logged in a DD Form 214. And, and that just, in a lot of ways, just doesn't seem fair. But that's the way the rules are set up. And so we're working with him to try to, see how we can help him get a lot of the disability benefits he truly deserves. And, wearing the uniform, deploying to other countries to do amazing things under some very challenging circumstances. And it's like, who put this crack in the system for something to slip through? And it's tough.
Yeah. Are you talking like the Title 10 and the 180 days? Like
that's part of it. But then being in this GS role, that doesn't go down on a DD Form 214.
And that's crazy, right? Like, how do you force someone to wear a uniform? How do you wear a uniform if you're not in service at the time? You can't wear a uniform if you're not.
That was the first time I had ever heard a story like that. And so we're trying to help him and learn more about it. But like, I was like, well, if you were a civilian, did you still have to go qualify on the rifle range? He said, yeah. I'm like, well, sounds like you're in the military. He said, yeah. So there's some unique situations out there, and we're doing the best we can to get him the benefits that he deserves.
Yeah. You mentioned something too on the business side, that you did a lot of these turnaround things when you were on the corporate side, and it almost didn't matter what industry it was in, right? Everybody has the same kind of problems. And you mentioned something about SOPs, and it seems like it's almost a double-edged sword, right? SOPs are great, or can be great, to streamline things, but they can also be a curse if they're outdated or not working properly or flawed in some way, and you're still following these SOPs that could be improved upon. So it's kind of curious to see, your thoughts on that.
No, you're exactly right. And, sometimes these, SOPs, it's an Excel spreadsheet that somebody has used for 10 years. And it's a great SOP for that person, but it's not an efficient tool for, horizontal or vertical alignment within a company. And so that's where, an emotional attachment truly develops to some of those personalized SOPs. And they work great for that individual, but they're not scalable. They're not efficient for updating, for sharing information. And then when everybody has their own little spreadsheet or process or procedure, then you've got all these process and procedures that just clash instead of mesh. And that's tough. And I see, and I've got a very heavy operations background, but also understand the financial piece very well too. And so I'm also amazed at all of the, walls that people build between operations and finance, because they all need the same information. They all should get it from the same places, but it's they just, there's that firewall, and it hurts forecasting, it hurts analyzing results, but everybody loves the way they do it, and they don't know why everybody else can't just do it their way. And it's just not, an efficient, scalable system. And then, when differences show up in numbers, everybody thinks theirs are right and everybody else's are wrong. And so it just makes it harder.
Yeah, it's almost like that confirmation bias that small businesses can get when they're looking for an answer. They always see the one that has the answer of what they have in their mind as correct.
Yeah. And and I've seen it a lot. The operations people don't communicate well with the finance people, and vice versa. And they just think the others, the enemy, to the executive leadership. And and so if you can tear those walls down, and I've shown them, when you tear these walls down, you'll have less work, you'll have better numbers, you'll have much more alignment, and a whole lot less stress. And it when that light bulb goes off in their head, that's when it's really fun. That you can see that things are starting to get better, not only for that individual, but for the collective. But a lot of that comes from the command structure and climate within that company. And I was helping a company one time, and they had a parent company, but this was a large steel fabrication and erection company, and they had been struggling for a long time. And so I went to the parent company. I'm like, look, they've had challenges for a long time, and they really haven't done a whole lot to improve them. But the parent company hasn't done anything to really help it either. And by not raising expectations and not providing the tools to train the people to meet those raised expectations, you're just stagnant, and in a bad spot. And so, you really have to have alignment, horizontal and vertical throughout the entire organization for turnarounds to really be successful. If that command climate and structure is not there, employees are going to see the consultant as a temporary fixture. We'll put up with them as long as they're here. Then when they're gone, we'll go back to doing things, the way we like to do them. And then executive leadership doesn't really get involved, and so things never get better. So when you have that alignment and you have that focus on really, improving, then that's when it's really fun.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed being on the consulting side is a lot of people think if you don't have industry experience, then it doesn't matter what you know or what your field of expertise, like it's not able to layer on that. That's just right. Especially in some of these, oil and gas is one of them, right?
Yeah.
Where if you don't have oil and gas experience, good luck trying to break into oil and gas. Same thing in, medical, pharmaceutical, that sort of stuff, these are actually industries that I've broken into with my consulting business, because I've been able to demonstrate, how I can layer on, and sales and marketing is kind of my area of expertise with consulting, but I've been able to show them how I could layer it on multiple industries. And all I need to do is just come out and figure out what you guys are doing and how you guys are doing it, find out what the product or the services is, and then, I can back in what I do to help your company regardless of industry.
You're exactly right. I've seen it all the time, and it's so much of it is just broken down into there's no real process, and what I've discovered also is there's the process that's supposed to happen, there's the process that actually happens, and there's the process that should happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask 5 different people, you're going to get 5 different answers on what those are, because the process that's supposed to happen, nobody likes it, so nobody uses it, but nobody changes what's supposed to happen. The process that does happen, everybody makes up their own little process, so then nothing really, there's no synergies, there's no efficiencies. But then the process that should happen, nobody is leading and getting the people together and say, okay, this is our situation, what should we be doing?
Yeah.
Looking at the windshield, what should that look like, instead of looking at the rear view mirror?
Right.
And they never see, or rarely see, the past as a sunk cost.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change that.
Yeah.
But the future, you have a lot of control over how you handle that. And so, just those 3 things, sometimes the light bulb goes off in them. So, we can really simplify the complex here and get everybody aligned. But, sometimes they just, like the way they do it, and can't understand why everybody else doesn't like their way.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things with a lot of these, companies, they have the tunnel vision, right? They're not able to, see outside. And that's why you bring a consultant in or somebody in from the outside that has a different perspective and can take a look at it in an objective way that isn't necessarily married to the system or the process that they've been in for so long. Right.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say now.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like you said, like it's tough to break into certain industries. And I've seen that as well, especially in like manufacturing. Like, oh, if you don't understand manufacturing, then you can't work in the industry. But it's like, you guys have been doing it the same way, the status quo forever, and something's broken. You need a fresh set of eyes to come in. Like, that old expression, like a carpenter tries to fix everything with a hammer, right? Sort of thing. So bring in somebody with a different skill set. They might have a unique way to look at it and find new solutions to your problems that you're never thinking of. So I don't know why companies are so, try to shun people away that have experience in different areas. Bring them in, get ideas, be open to it.
So maybe they don't want that.
A lot of them don't. No, it's a pride thing.
In my career, I have found that there's 2 basic types of, environments. One is where they're, when they're looking to bring somebody on board, they're looking for a very specific set of experiences, and that can be really good. The other is they're looking for a very specific set of skill sets, and that is where I've always enjoyed, work a lot more, is when they're looking for skill sets rather than experience, because skill sets can be so transferable. Experience, isn't always.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you're like, I've done, upstream oil and gas on drill ships, and, we're putting together up to 7 miles of drill pipe with all types of challenges and fluids and everything. But if I go to a midstream, pipeline company, they're going to think that I have nothing to contribute because I haven't done midstream pipe before.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, they're looking for experience over skill set. And I'm not saying that's a knock against that company. It's just, that's a model that they have found that works.
Mm-hmm.
But, and through my experience, I've always enjoyed, applying skill sets, across a myriad of situations because, when I do turnarounds, 75 to 85% of the challenges are the exact same. Every company I've been to, I'm not necessarily having to reinvent the wheel. I'm having to break down, dissect, and simplify, the same things over and over. And so it's amazing that, and when a company's struggling, I say, look, this makes you normal. This doesn't make you unique. And it's true.
Yeah. That's good. This is going to be good stuff because we do have a lot of consultants, that are veterans that obviously utilize, their skill sets in the military and then try to translate that to the civilian world to help companies and take a different perspective. I know we have quite a bit of that on here, so I know that'll be helpful for sure.
Yeah. I had a battalion commander when I was in the Army, and great life lesson. I was I think a second lieutenant, maybe a new first lieutenant, and the battery commander was on vacation. The battery XO was on vacation, so I'm trying to do 3 jobs, and I was a platoon leader, and so on a Thursday we did sergeant's time, and that's when all the crews go out and do crew level training. And so because I was doing 3 jobs, I was in the battery commander's office trying to get stuff done, and the battalion commander calls me, and I'll do the edited version of this, but he's like, Woody, what is up with your sergeant's time? I'm like, sir, I don't know. I'll go find out and I'll report back to you. And so I did, and there were some, probably some things that should have been going better, and so I've fixed it and reported back and said, sir, this is what was wrong. This is what I did to fix it, and this is what won't happen again. And the whole rest of the conversation was, Woody, I expect stuff to get messed up. I just want to know what you're doing to fix it. And so I learned from that he knew I was trying to do 3 jobs, and he knew the people were gone. And so, but I just owned it. I didn't say, well, so-and-so didn't tell me this and this and that. So I'm trying to do 3. I said, I just owned it. And when the conversation was over that quick, I thought, wow. I tell my kids, just own it and fix it. Doesn't matter if it's your fault, just own it and fix it. And people will know if it's your fault or not, but just take responsibility. And so that's been a great lesson for me too.
Yeah,
it's true. Nobody wants to hear excuses. I'd rather have someone that just comes straight up and tells me, no, I screwed up. Okay, good. Now we can move forward.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, John, just wanted to pivot a little bit into your entrepreneurial experience, because obviously kind of working for companies and doing these turnarounds and things like that, kind of being in these different kind of corporate machines.
Yeah.
And then, as well as, the military, the government, that sort of thing. And now like pivoting to entrepreneurship and starting your own company. What was kind of the transition like for you? Kind of coming from, in the corporate structure with all the resources and, everything else to, then pivoting into, now you're running your own ship.
Yeah. Yeah. So doing turnarounds, a lot of times I felt like I was a senator. I could tell people what I thought they should be doing. I could tell people why I thought they should be doing it, but I would really have very little influence over whether or not they did it and over the outcome of what they did. And so, when you're, within the company, I feel more like, a commander where, I've never been afraid to have the accountability of what I'm doing or not doing. And so, and then also I've learned there is a lot of value in deciding who you talk to and who you don't talk to every day. And so, by creating, my own company, I get to choose to talk to veterans every day, which is really cool. I love that. And then, there's no office politics, where I am now. I love that part of it. And then we're running a business, but we have a great purpose. And so I love that part of it. And now, creating this nonprofit where we can help even more people, perhaps at a greater level. I'm very excited about that, and have all of it just, work together.
Yeah. So how does that work? Because I've heard people do this before, where they've got kind of a private company that, that does something, and then they set up a nonprofit, on the side there to, to serve. Like, how do you see those two entities working together?
Now, that's a great question. And we're still, working out the final formula, but, there's a lot of companies out there that help veterans for free.
Yeah.
With their benefits, and that's great. And so I think there's, that's going to be a great opportunity for us to try to help some veterans for free. And we want to start off helping people who are first time applicants. And then at the same time determine, okay, of these first time applicants, which ones need a financial bridge. And so we want to work with, the community, with corporate America, with civic organizations, to say, hey, here's a lot of people that really need a lot of help. We'll do all the legwork. Can we partner together to help these people in this way? And then, we've got, veterans disability benefits, where, we want to help people who already have a VA rating, but maybe they got a 0 rating. They were approved, but they have a 0 rating. I met with a vet on Saturday night on the 4th. He's at 70%, and he's like, I'd like to get to 100. I'm like, well, we can help you with that. And he said, my life is fine if I don't get the other 30%. And a lot of people, a lot of veterans I find are like that. They're like, I don't need the extra money. And so I'm like, well, if you earned a bonus at work, would you say I don't need it? No, you would take it. And if you truly don't need the money, that's an amazing spot in life to be in. But go ahead and get that benefit and donate that to a cause of your choice, or invest it for your kids, or something like that. Veterans can spend that money way smarter than the government can. And and there's a lot of veterans that are under benefited, and there's 12 main things I hear all the time. But we try to show them that you've earned the money. It was budgeted long ago. They've factored your particular case into that model a long time ago. So go ahead and get what you deserve and what you earn, and then take control of it. Once you have control of it, you control how it's spent. If you really don't need the money, donate it to a veteran cause where they do need that money. Don't let the government spend it to see if rats can transition in outer space. Spend it on worthy stuff like veterans.
Yeah, that's a great perspective and a great way to look at it. And that's one of the things when I heard your presentation at the luncheon, the Academy Association's luncheon, that really kind of resonated, with me. Like, hey, these are benefits that you earn. Like, the government has already figured out, what that was going to be when you started your services, and has already planned and budgeted. So you're not taking from somebody else. These are yours. That you earned.
That's right. And it's not welfare. It's not a social program. Everybody in the military was paid and is paid below market value for the service that you're delivering. And the VA knows this. They use that to build this long-term benefits model. And so they're paying you less today so that they can pay you what you earn and deserve later. But too many veterans, that's a new perspective to them. And so, it's educating them on that perspective, and so that they can spend that money smarter than the government can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. That really resonated me when I heard you say that, and hopefully it will resonate with a lot of people as
Yeah.
well. And then one of the other things I want to touch on before we open it up to Q&A is you are also the president of the West Point Association here in Houston. And tell us a little bit about that organization and kind of what you've been doing out in the community and some of the things that you have, upcoming. I know you have a big veteran entrepreneurial event.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm president of the West Point Society of Greater Houston, and there's probably 1,000 plus graduates, in the Houston area, and every year, we're always trying to get veterans together, and it doesn't have to be grads, it doesn't have to be Army people. That's one thing I love about the Service Academy and all their associations around. You could be, a brand new enlistee in one branch of the military, or the highest level in another, and you're welcome at every event, and typically your family too. But every year we'll do a big Founders Day to celebrate West Point. We'll do other events. We'll have watch parties for Army football games a lot. We try to do networking events to help veterans with their careers. One thing we started last year was doing an entrepreneur summit for veterans, and the Association of Graduates at West Point, the National Association, has been doing these for a few years, but we wanted to do it bigger and better. So we broadened the spectrum of people that we wanted to come, and it was a huge success. So this year we're partnering with Rice. We're going to have it at the Ion. We're bringing in the other service academies. We'll be inviting all the Texas A&M entrepreneur crowd, the University of Texas entrepreneur crowd, the University of Houston entrepreneur crowd, all the private equity groups, VC groups. We can come up, just whoever is an entrepreneur or wants to be an entrepreneur, and whoever is a veteran or really appreciates veterans. There's a lot of people who aren't veterans, but they want to invest in veterans, and so if that's going to be a large part of the Houston area. So we're very excited about that. It's going to be November 11th and 12th. November 11th is Veterans Day. That evening we're going to have a charity poker tournament, and we're going to raise money for some worthy causes. And then the 12th will be an entrepreneur summit. We have some amazing speakers coming. Those names to be released here in the near future. But the first half of the day will be dedicated to entrepreneurship through acquisition. A lot of veterans, they're used to being in charge. They want to stay in charge. They want to buy a company, but buying a company can be very expensive. So we want to pair those people with potential investors. And then the second half of the day will be, more focused on startups, entrepreneurship through startup. And again, a lot of veterans, they work with amazing technologies. They know how to turn that into a private company. And so we want to pair investors with those people. And then, each component have an exit strategy. And so very excited about that. We're really expecting several hundred people, just based off what we did last year, and having the partnerships we do this year, the facilities that we have this year, and just the people involved. I think it's going to be an amazing day and a half for people to get a lot of value from.
That's amazing. That's incredible, John. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that was going out here in Houston. And like you said, you've got people from all over the country that are flying in. So obviously we've got a great, veteran community, largest veteran community in the country here in Houston, but there's not really been many really big events like that are on a national scope. So it's really good to see that, you're here, boots on the ground, and going to bring something like this to the Houston veteran community. So
and Rice has done a lot to promote veteran entrepreneurship. Every year they have a veterans business battle, and that's an amazing event. It's mostly focused on startups. And probably the thing I'm excited most about it is we're going to spend half our time on acquisition. And because there's so many companies out there, private equity is trying to bundle them. Veterans want to break into that market with one company, and then, perhaps later on others, either, horizontal or vertical alignment. But I'm really excited about it. I think, almost anybody who has any interest in entrepreneurship is going to gain a lot of value from it.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, so we have to make sure we get all that information, we'll drop it. So when we record these, we drop them in like a recorded, course.
Awesome.
So that way we'll put all those links to all that stuff, and then we'll post it in the calendar too, so people will see it coming up.
And we'll be looking for sponsors. So, we'll get that word out, to help us, fund the event and raise money for worthy causes.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Hey, David, anything else for John? You want to open up? I know we've only got a few people here on the call, but do you want to open it up at all, or any other questions?
Well, we'll open it up regardless. And we can still keep our conversation going.
Yeah.
So Alan and Lewis, if you guys are able to, feel free to, unmute yourself, turn your camera on there. Or if you can't do that, you can at least drop something in the chat if you got a question that you want us to ask John, or just for us too. So feel free to do that. No, I think that's an awesome thing. And I hear a lot about Rice University. So, I wish I was closer. I've only been out to Houston once in my life, and it was literally a day trip. I flew out there to meet a distributor, and then I flew back the same day. So I didn't get to experience much of anything.
Yeah. Now, Rice has been great. I remember when I was, when I knew I wanted to go to grad school and I knew I wanted to pursue an MBA, I pursued, and I looked at a lot of different programs, and I definitely was not valedictorian at West Point, and so a lot of it was like thinking, well, what is Rice going to want with me? And so I just like, well, all they can do is say no. So I scheduled an appointment. I went and visited, and just having a conversation similar to this, I'm like, John, we'd love to have you in the program, and I realized Rice, way more than any of the program I talked to, they were so pro-veteran, pro-military, and that was probably the main deciding factor is they really care about me and what we as veterans have done.
So I was taking notes throughout this whole time, and one of the things you had said earlier on was you simplify the complex.
Yeah.
And then later on you mentioned, that there's the same handful of things that you see in almost every company, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. It's literally the little stuff. It's people focusing way too much time on small things. Yeah. I always call it, tripping over dollars to pick up dimes syndrome.
Yeah.
That's always one thing I see. They're just focusing on the wrong crap. What gets the attention, what gets measured, gets the focus, and they're just looking at the wrong stuff all the time. So I don't know if you can give an example, or if you just want to elaborate a little bit more on, just simplifying some of the complex things, like, what does that mean to you?
So, a lot of people have their own Excel spreadsheets, and some of them have a lot of cool bells and whistles. They work great for them, but it's not scalable. And so you're asking for information from other people who can't just directly input into that spreadsheet. You have to send it to that person. So that information takes a long time to gather, to send, to re-enter before you can even start to look at, okay, what's the impact of this new data? And then, so let's say the operations, spends the time to do all that. Well, then it makes it that much harder to communicate with the finance people, because, the finance, they're looking at the rearview mirror and the windshield. They're trying to figure out how much money are we spending so that they can figure out how much money they can spend. And operations, all too often is, I see is, okay, what's the next task we have to do? Instead of saying, what's the next task we have to do and how much margin do we have to get off that task? I have found, especially in the construction space, there's a lot of genius people who are really good at getting the next task done. Too few of them are really good at getting the next task done at a profit. And so there's a huge shortage of KPIs, metrics that are even identified, much less analyzed, to help people gain that clarity. And that's what we try to do, is show them the true cost of everything that they're doing and not doing, and everything that they could be doing or could not be doing.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, always it's the revenue number. And I just did a post last week where I was like, F revenue, right? Like, revenue doesn't mean anything. It depends on the profit, but I can tell you that 90-something% of the people that I consult with, they don't understand their total cost or true cost, whether it's a product or service that they're putting out there, everything that actually involves going around it. And they might shortfall 20-30% of what they think their real costs are. And I said, as soon as you hit a little bit of a hiccup like that's it. Now you're upside down. Right.
So I was at the steel company. One of the first meetings I went to, one of the higher ups there was saying, our expected margin on this project is X%. So I raised my hand. I'm like, are you talking gross or net? And it's like they had no idea what I was talking about. And they just said, no, we're going to make this much. I said, is that gross or net? And I never got a good answer. So that's when I went to finance and said, hey, give me the income statements of the last 18 months. And so I trended all of it, analyzed it, and their SG&A was virtually 99.99% of their gross. And I'm like, if everything goes perfect, you might make 0.01% on this. And it's just a foreign concept to them. Now, I'm not trying to poke people in the eye with that, but that's where executive leadership fails over and over to ensure that the people managing their money, understand the money. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You're a financial manager. You're given a job, that's going to cost this much, that's expected to make this much. But all too often, executive leadership doesn't really share that concept or ensure that their people have the understanding or the tools to, implement that. And so that's what I'm saying. A lot of the fault of a lot of these challenges start with executive leadership. And it's not just, they just can't figure it out. Well, what have you tried to teach them?
Yeah, well, it's the biggest thing I saw. So when I tried to help a turnaround story, like during COVID, like a lot of challenges there. But, one of the things was there was such a disconnect between the executive leadership and the boots on the ground. There were so many assumptions that the executive leaders like, this task should take 30 minutes. This should do this. They spend so much of their day doing this. And I just stepped in and I spent literally weeks just shadowing my people at the ground level saying, what do you do every day? What does this do? Let me see that test. Let me do it myself and see how long this takes. Let me do a time trial. And then I was getting real data. I'm like, listen, people, you guys are way off. Like, you're so far disconnected. It's not even funny.
Yeah. You're exactly right. And, it just, there's no tracking of the true cost of where stuff goes. There's, these huge buckets, but there's not enough specificity. And so therefore, if you're, you can't do root cause analysis on why things are going really well or why things are going really bad. And so therefore you can't scale the good and you can't fix the bad because you have no clarity. So then you just start making assumptions. And I hear this a lot. The next project will fix everything. Well, if you're not doing anything different and you're doing it with the exact same people and process and procedures, what makes you think that next project is going to fix everything? Right. It's typically another disaster, and the company's just taking on more risk.
Yeah, and you're spreading yourself thinner. So again, how do you expect to be more efficient now that you're drained even more? Like, your people are already overtaxed. Like, some people are like, oh man, we're bleeding out, so we got to cut overhead. I'm like, no, you might need to increase overhead. Yeah. You might think you're increasing your cost, but you're not, because your turnover, you're burning through all your staff because you're killing them, making them work 70 hours a week. So if we can fix that, we can keep the true talent here, and they'll all be more efficient.
And here's two more lessons I've learned that cost companies a lot of money. It is expensive to take care of your equipment. It is tremendously expensive to not take care of your equipment.
Right.
Same thing with safety. It's expensive to be safe. It's tremendously expensive to not be safe. And a lot of companies just don't see that. They see, assets management, equipment maintenance as a cost, not a revenue driver. So therefore they have these super packed schedules that they typically can't meet if things go perfect. Then they have all this unplanned downtime because this equipment they haven't maintained fails. And then the parts may be obsolete. Now they're looking literally on eBay for parts, or the crew they need to come fly in is 8 weeks out booked. And so it's just, you know,
And it's the opportunity cost, right? It's not
It
those
is.
things that you can see on paper. It's the lost revenue, or if you allocate
Right.
your resources here versus here, what would your return been over there? So it's those kind of hidden costs too.
yeah,
that people
I,
don't
I
take
know
in.
and you're exactly right. In oil and gas, the cheapest part of a fix was that piece of pipe you got to weld. The expensive part is having that pipe not flowing anything. And a lot of companies just fail to see that too.
Mhm.
They just say, "Oh, well, this would cost us 20,000 to fix." Well, it's really going to cost you 200,000 because nothing's moving.
Right.
Now you
Right.
got to work overtime. You can't bill that.
Yeah. Then it's even worse, right?
Right.
Now you're compounding it.
They're trying to put 10 pounds of dirt in a 5-pound bag.
That's a pleasant way of saying it.
Well, good stuff, John. We're at the top of the hour here, and I know you're a busy man, got a lot of things planned, I'm sure, today and this week. But we definitely thank you for taking the time and sharing your story, and then sharing obviously your new mission and what you're doing to help veterans out there. But we really appreciate you being part of the community and everything that you're out there doing for veterans. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. This was an honor to sit and visit with veterans and how to help more veterans and how we can help each other. So anytime, my hand is up, ready to step in.
Awesome. All right, John, thanks so much. David, any last words?
Yeah, stay profitable. That's always mine.
Have a great day, y'all.
Bye, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
See.